This is wall sections part 1. This will probably take a couple sections or sessions to get you through. It's probably one of the most difficult to understand. So follow along pretty carefully and try to understand, because once you understand what a wall section is, you'll understand a lot more how a building goes together, which will give you a lot more latitude when you're designing to know what you can do and what you can't do, and you'll realize that it's more than just lines on paper at this point. So you should have a handout that looks a lot like that right there. It's a wall section, and you're going to need a pencil and a triangle today. You'll need your scale as well, but we're going to be using a different scale today. You've been using a 1/4 inch up to now, but we're going to use a 3/4 inch scale to draw this wall section. So you want to take the opportunity to familiarize yourself with that scale, because it is a little bit different, and make sure you know how to read it. Fairly simply, what we'll do is we'll start at the floor line, which you see in this general area right here, which is the top of your concrete slab. We're going to be using a concrete slab construction versus a crawl space for this purpose. So what you want to do is go ahead and establish where that floor line is, which you'll remember is on your elevations you struck a floor line. So just choose a place that you can get it on your sheet, kind of plan it accordingly of how big it's going to be, so you're not cramped all the way down to the bottom and you got some room to grow at the top. You go ahead and draw in that floor line. Now in this case, since we're using a concrete slab, it's going to be 4 inches thick. So 4 inches from the top to the bottom of that slab is 4 inches. So you're going to measure down 4 inches tall, and you're going to draw this second line that you see, which is the bottom of your concrete slab, and of course it sets on the ground. And then you're going to come down from I want you to measure down from, again, that floor line, the top line that you first drew. Measure down 16 inches, and which is 1'4", and this is where the top of your footing is going to be, and this is your footing here, which is in this instance going to be 8 inches tall and 2 foot wide. So go ahead and measure down 8 inches and draw the bottom of your footing, and then what I want you to do is go ahead and strike a line, which will be your wall line. So go ahead and strike that line. Then I want you to measure over 7 5/8, or you can use 8 inches, and draw the other side of that foundation wall that you see right there, and that is an 8-inch concrete block that we'll be using to support our structure. So that's 8 inches wide. And then that footing, I want you to come back, and on each side of that footing measure over 8 inches, and that way you can draw that 2 foot wide, because you've got 8 inches in the middle, 8 inches on each side, and then that's 2 feet. I wondered how we came up with that. So you've got that. Now go back to your concrete block that you just drew, and there's 2 of them there. There's one that's 8 inches tall, and there's another one that's 8 inches tall. In reality, a concrete block, see if I can draw this for you. A concrete block that concrete block that you just drew is in actuality 7 5/8 inch tall. as well as 7 5/8 inch wide for a 8-inch concrete block. But their mortar joint it takes to put them together is 3/8 of an inch. So when you add those together, you'll get the 8 inches. Now, right here, where you've got that concrete slab going in, that's what they call a header block. And basically, it is shaped more like that, like an L shape, versus that square shape. It's more of an L shape versus that square shape that you see here. And that's so that that concrete slab can come over and sit on top of that concrete block. And then this sits on that footing that we just had. And of course, our wall, our stud wall, 4-inch stud wall, is going to sit on top of that. So that's what you're drawing in this general vicinity right here. So go ahead and draw that in. You can draw the thickness of those concrete blocks, because as you know, when you're looking at a concrete block, if you're looking down on a concrete block and plan, what you actually see is you'll see a block that has holes in it. So it'll look more like that, and this will be the solid part, which would be made out of concrete. They used to call them cinder blocks, which they were made actually out of cinders, which when they used a lot of coal fired boilers, they would actually save those cinders after that the coal was burnt, and they would mix it in with these blocks to do it. But now they just make it out of concrete, because we don't use any coal fired boilers anymore. So that's looking down on it, so you'll see that, and you'll see these web thicknesses. That's about 2 inches that you'll be seeing, which is the width there, and this is that hole that we were looking at. So that's the width of those the walls of the blocks. So draw those about 2 inches wide, that you'll see right here in this area, 2 inches wide. So you're measuring up 7 5/8, and you're measuring 3/8 of an inch for a joint, and then you're measuring back up 8, which would put you right back at the top of your concrete slab. Then you're going to measure over 2 inches to get that wall thickness of that concrete block, and measure over 2 inches to get that wall thickness of that concrete block as well. And then you want to attack how to draw this stud wall. As you know, a stud wall, 2x4, is 3.5 inches thick, and you'll see some plywood on the outside of that on your handout, but what I'm drawing right now is the wood stud itself, and that is going to sit right on the edge of that concrete slab where it lines up with the face of the concrete block. And you're going to go there and draw that line. You're going to draw it up to the top of your bearing point there, which is that 8'1.5" that you have we've already discussed in your elevations. So draw that line 8'1.5" inches tall. Also, what you want to do is go ahead and measure over your 3.5 inches and draw the other side of that stud wall. And then we're going to start, and you can close out the top of that. Just draw a line to connect those two lines together. You're going to drop down 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches to do the double top plate. And again, a 2x4 is 1.5 inches by 2 by 3.5 inches wide. So you're going to drop down 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches see if I can draw that a little bit bigger scale for you. So again, right there, what you're actually drawing is that top of that wall. You're dropping down 1.5 inches from there, and you're dropping down 1.5 inches more, and then you're using your symbols, and we've given you material symbols at the beginning of the class. I hope you still got them. And you draw an X through it, and that's those 2x4s that are sitting on top of that wall to support your roof truss that we'll be drawing here in just a minute. So do that. Also, go ahead and do that at the bottom of that wall. In this case, because we're in a high wind zone, we'll have a double bottom plate. Sometimes there's just a single bottom plate, but in this case we're going to draw a double bottom plate, and that's to give it a look. That's just the way that the anchor bolts need to hold on to something when we put them in there. So go ahead and draw at the bottom of your wall section. Go ahead and draw those that double plate at the bottom as well, 1.5 inches and 1.5 inches, and again draw those X's through it just like we did here at the top, and we'll do this at the bottom of that wall as well. And then what I want you to do is go ahead and add some thickness, some finishes and sheathing to this. Come to the inside of that wall and draw, and come over 1/2 inch for your sheetrock, and go ahead and draw that sheetrock finish in. And then you'll see, you'll have to look really close on your handout, but between the stud wall outside, line of the stud wall, and the siding itself is a 1/2 inch layer of plywood. And I think your note says 1/2 inch plywood or equal. Sometimes they'll use a oriented strand board or other kind of sheathing. But go ahead and measure out 1/2 inch from here out and draw in that plywood sheathing the entire length of that wall that you've already drawn. We'll come back and add the shingles a little bit later. And we probably need to take a break here and just kind of review and make sure you understand where you are in this wall section and the parts that you're putting together. This is a little bit different. It's more technical probably than we've been drawing so far, but it really will help you understand the building process. So take a break and just review, make sure you got all your measurements before we come back in part 2 and build upon this section a little bit more.